chapter of the entire Bhagavad Gita, which is chapter number 17, where Krishna is going to continue his theme, which we started yesterday, in our deeper understanding of the tradition of Gita. At one level, yes, we have the philosophy of Gita, but we also have to, to practice that philosophy of Gita, we need to create a tradition which basically comprises of philosophy, the principles, and the external practices. So in yesterday's discussion, we discussed the core principles, the divine principles, the Daivi qualities, right? And in this particular chapter, Krishna is going to elaborate more on the outer circle of the tradition, which is the practices aspect, right? So let's begin our discussion with our invocatory prayers. Joining your palms together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let's begin our discussion of chapter number 17, which is called as Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. It can sound a little mouthful if for the first time. So Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. So we heard a similar name like this. It was called as Guna Traya Vibhaga Yoga, 14 chapter as a division of the three modes of material nature. So here we are talking about another kind of division. This is Shraddha, here means faith. Shraddha, Traya, the three types. Vibhaga, divisions. Yoga, right? So the yoga of the three divisions of faith, right? So what is leading up to this specific chapter? If you remember the way Krishna ended the 16th chapter, he gave a very clear-cut understanding. So in the 16th chapter, we saw the Daivi Asura. So we saw about the two categories of people. They were the divine and the demoniac, right? And so those who Yam Shastra Vidhim Ustrijya Vartate Kamakaraka. We discussed that how one should never give up the guidance of the scriptures, the path of the scriptures. So basically, divine basically are the ones who follow scriptures. And when I say scriptures, here we are specifically talking about the Vedas. And the demoniac are the ones who reject the Vedas. And they act according to their own whims and fancies, etc. Right? So this is quite clear. So, but then what about those who are neither divine, in a sense that they are not strictly following the scriptures, They're strictly following the Vedas, but neither are they rejecting any kind of authority. They do follow some kind of authority in their life. They do follow some kind of a practice in their life, but that is based more on one's faith, right? There some deeper belief systems that they may carry, or sometimes these belief systems can also be social constructs, sometimes their own personal imaginations, or sometimes they may be coming down in the form of their own whatever ancestral practices, etc., etc., right? So there are these faith-based followers, right? What about them? Because they are clearly not demoniac. They are sincere. They are following many rules and regulations and trying to live some kind of a regulated life according to their own understanding. And neither are they actually strictly following the Vedas. So where do these people come in? Which category do they come in? Right? So this is a very important question. And if you actually look at it, it is basically questioning. If you look at the world around us, not everybody is following the Vedas. Even Vedas are sometimes can be seen as a very specific contextual Indian text, right? Even within India, not everybody follows the Vedas. Many people have, like, for example, what is the Vedic teaching? What we studied in the Bhagavad Gita, understanding the concept of absolute truth, understanding the nature of the Purusha, understanding the nature of the Param Purusha, the Purushottama, Krishna or Paramatma, and rendering devotional service unto that Param Purusha, Purushottama, right? So that was the Vedic path. But even within the quote unquote Indian context, also you'll see sometimes people may not follow exactly what the Gita has been speaking so far. But yet it is not that they are atheistic, but they still do follow certain rules and regulations and their own set of rituals and philosophy and practice, etc. What about such people, right? And if you extend that even in the broader context of what about the other faith-based religions that are there all over the world, right? Faith-based practices. Just because somebody is not following the Vedas, are we supposed to look at them as a demoniac way? As sometimes certain traditions in the world may profess that if you're not following my path, then you are a demon, right? But that is not the understanding that the Vedic culture follows. So that is the highlight of the specific chapter, where we are going to now broaden our understanding of how to look at people based on their faith. So broadly, if you see, now this word Shraddha, remember so there are two kind of meanings I would like to draw out here, the word Shraddha. At one level, this is a very deep spiritual conviction. Deep spiritual conviction. And the other meaning of the word Shraddha, which is what we are using in this specific chapter, is just faith. Now, faith is just some kind of a belief, right? That something is there, something is right. Now, this faith is usually born out of certain social constructs, or sometimes even based on certain historical information, historical events or information. Like at so and so time, so and so Messiah has been revealed certain knowledge, and therefore now we follow that knowledge because a particular person has received a particular knowledge, and now we follow with faith in the teachings of that particular great personality, and so on. So so that is basically what we are talking about as faith. But when you're using the word spiritual conviction is primarily born from scriptures, from the Vedas. in fact, the impetus for the practitioner in this path, in the scriptural path, in the Vedic path, for them is their understanding of dharma, or such traditions are also called as dharmic traditions, where based on the teachings of the Vedas, they practice when I use the word practice, I'm referring to the sadhana, and then internalize, and then that leads to their deep conviction. And when I use the word internalization, the experience component is very, very important. The anubhuti here means direct experience. So, for example, when we're reading the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna talks about dispassionate work, how dispassionate work can make one peaceful. So when you actually practice that, it's not just about a theoretical concept. Remember, we've been repeatedly emphasizing on in throughout this course that spiritual knowledge or spiritual learning is not an academic process. It's a whole lifestyle change that we have to bring, and the practice, the sadhana and application of that philosophy is very, very important for us to internalize it. And when you internalize means you experience what is given in the scripture, right? And without that, we are not here. Spirituality is not some kind of a blind following, right? So that is the key theme when we're talking about dharma based or dharmic traditions or dharmic practices, right? So basically here it means that history does not play a very pivotal role in dharma-centric traditions, right? Which means that if the Bhagavad Gita, we know, has been spoken by Lord Krishna, but that historical information is secondary, meaning that whether Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita or somebody else spoke Bhagavad Gita, we are interested in realizing what is written in the Bhagavad Gita. So we don't want to get hung over certain historical details and some historical facts. Our deep spiritual conviction is not coming from history, but our deep spiritual conviction is coming from our experience of what is written in the scriptures, right? And that is the the progressive path which the Vedas adhere to, and they talk about and they promote. That is why you will see, even though we have the broad gamut of Vedic texts, there are certain histories. They are also called itihasas, but those itihasas are not the primary texts. We have the 4 Vedas, then the Upanishads, then the Puranas. Puranas also, they carry a lot of historical information. Historical events are mentioned in the Puranas, but yet they are not primarily mere historical books, but rather they are philosophical books presenting philosophy through actual historical events. So that is why you'll see in many Puranic narratives, the main chronology of the event may not be maintained. And sometimes certain historical accuracies may also be not maintained, because the important point in Purana is not necessarily historical accuracy all the time, majority time there, but sometimes the stories can go through their own variations. More than historical accuracy, the Puranas are focusing more on philosophical integrity, meaning that a certain philosophical thought has to be very strongly communicated, right? So therefore you will see those of you studied some Purana, like for example Bhagavad Puran, which is considered the essence of all the Puranas, each canto primarily is focusing on one particular theme. What is creation, how the secondary creation takes place, how the Lord maintains, whenever the Lord appears, what are the different events that take place. So with that theme, supporting that theme, whatever are the historical events or the stories connected to that, they are narrated, right? So the main theme is not the storyline itself, but what are we supposed to learn from those storylines, and what are the philosophical concepts we are supposed to learn through those wonderful pastimes, right? So that is the idea. So if you can see, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, they are all focusing on certain philosophical training, right? Whereas itihasas are also there, the kavyas, itihasas, they are also there. They are also very important texts, right? But the primary focus has been given to these texts, just basically indicating that even in the itihasas also, if you see, they are also not just random boring history textbooks, just represent the stories in a chronology, capturing all the details of events. That is not the purpose of an itihasa. Itihasas also have very, very deep philosophical import that they want to, what are the life lessons that we should learn? What are the mistakes that we should not repeat? What are the lessons we can learn from the mistakes of other great personalities of the past? So they are also very, very deep self-transformative books, itihasas. Therefore, I refrain from using the word historical books for anything connected in the dharmic tradition and the Vedic tradition, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is, historical events and those chronologies, these are not the main factor, but the focus is on understanding certain eternal truths, and that is the philosophy part. And through the principles and practice, we internalize and create an experience for ourselves, and that is how we develop that conviction. That is what is the path of the scriptures, or the dharmic path. On the contrary, we also have faith-driven paths where the focus is more on historical events, right? That's why I mentioned earlier on, when a certain historical event has taken place, and now henceforth, I believe in certain event, and now therefore I am the adherent of that particular path, right? And it is so unfortunate or sad to see today that even though the Vedas are talking about a dharma-centric path, many times people end up following this like a historical faith-driven practice, right? So this subtle understanding is what we need to develop, that the path of the scriptures is a dharma-centric path where you're trying to understand and apply and internalize certain absolute principles, certain spiritual principles, whereas the faith-centric path are more history-centric events, sometimes due to certain customs people practice them. They follow, at the end of the day, externally both are following certain rules and regulations and certain tenets and etc. and so forth, and so on and so forth. But the pivot of the dharmic tradition and the pivot of faith-based tradition is completely different. So you cannot see them in the same light, right? So but then they are not also like demons who have completely rejected any form of discipline or any form of regulation. They also, even faith-based practitioners also have very strong regulation in their own life. So how do I then understand such people? That is basically Arjuna's question. Okay, am I supposed to reject them all completely as demons? That doesn't sound very fair to me. So Krishna, please tell me. So Arjuna begins his discussion by saying that what about those who do not follow the principles of scriptures, but worship according to their own imagination? Imagination here means based on certain historical information, based on certain ancestral customs, or due to certain social constructs, or sometimes due to their own convenience, whatever. They have created a system on their own, and now they are practicing it. So they're not following some eternal path. They're not following any Sanatana Dharma, but rather they're just following some modernized version of some kind of a faith practice. So what should we do? How do we understand them? So Krishna is now going to give a very beautiful understanding that such practitioners, you cannot generalize everyone in that practice as a demon, but rather you have to look at each individual on a case-to-case basis and classify them based on their gunas of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So these faith-based practitioners, basically their faith itself is driven by the guna that they are predominantly in. And that is where things get a little complicated, especially in the modernized world today. Whenever faith-based discussions come up, it's a very tricky subject matter, because you cannot generalize. Because within all these faith-based practices, in fact, if I may even extend understanding, in all modern practices, practitioners, you will see all these three gunas. There are the sattvic people, there are the rajasic people, and there are also these extreme tamasic people also. So you cannot generalize the entire tradition, the entire faith-based tradition as sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, but we'll have to really look at them based on the nature of their outer circle, which is the practice, because they lack that inner circle, the deep philosophical understanding of certain deeper principles of this creation, right? So their main pivot is their practices itself, right? So therefore, we have to understand, or we have to classify them based on their external practices. So that is going to be the theme of this chapter today. Very, very interesting chapter. Short, but very interesting again. So this chapter begins with the first 7 verses, where Arjuna again is going to ask about Arjuna's question on these faith divisions. Right? Where do they, how do I understand them? So then the Lord, he explains, according to Trividha Bhavati Shraddha, three types are the Shraddha. Trividha Bhavati Shraddha, Dehinam sa Swabhavaja. So according to all the Dehina, one who has accepted this body, basically one who is acting at the level of this body, right? So these are all basically bodily faith groups or bodily religions, right? According to Trividha Bhavati, there are 3 kinds of Shraddha. Based on what? Based on one's swabhava, based on one's modes of material nature. They are classified as Satviki, Rajasi, Chaiva, Tamasi, Chetitam, Shunu. So basically they are divided based on gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, like that. And oh Arjuna, according to one's existence under these modes, one evolves a particular kind of faith. So the living being is said to be of one particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. So this is the broadness of vision that we also need to develop, that today the world likes to divide itself or identify itself with various denominations, right? But the vision of Bhagavad Gita is, these denominations are not the main classification, but our gunas are the main classification, right? And therefore we have to, as practitioners, we also need to refine our gunas, right? Not just blindly adhere to a particular denomination, but rather work on our gunas and see where do we stand, like that. So then here he is going to talk about the different gunas. So first he talks about those in the sattva, the one in the mode of goodness. Krishna says the following. He says, people in the mode of goodness worship the devatas. That is the devatas or the demigods. Right? So basically any kind of an elevated personality, an elevated divine personality comes in this category of the devatas. Such people, they follow these devatas. Then those in the mode of passion, right, they worship the demons. So Prabhupada in the purport, he gives an example that how during the Second World War, apparently one person in Calcutta was worshipping Hitler. The reason was because of the Second World War, he became very rich. So indirectly he thought, oh, because Hitler started the Second World War, he is my God. So that is, how Rajasic kind of faith-based practice that one may have. Then those in ignorance, right, they worship ghosts and spirits. Even today, in many parts of the world, this kind of spirit worship, ghost worship is done. Prabhupada also talks in the purport about how in many villages in India, sometimes people knowing that there are ghosts under a particular tree, they go and do all kinds of rituals, which sometimes even involve certain corpses, dead bodies, right? So there are some practices there all over the world, not just in the Indian subcontinent, but all over the world. This kind of dark practices are there. So they come in this kind of, and they have full faith. They actually believe that this is the path, and I have to follow the rules and regulations, and they very strictly adhere, and sometimes they even identify themselves with that kind of a denomination, right? So these are the faith in tamogun, or in ignorance, like that. Now, and then Krishna ends by saying, say, look, if you actually want to their faith can be seen by studying their outer circle of their practice, or their set of practices. And their practices can be analyzed based on analyzing 4 things. What are the 4 things that comprise that form a practice? Your ahara, food; yagya, your sacrifice; tapa, austerity; and finally dana, or charity. So these 4 things are something that people can never give up in their life, right? Everybody has to eat food. So based on what kind of food they eat, you can understand where is their faith, right? Sacrifice, everybody has to do some kind of sacrifice. It may not be like a Vedic ritual where they sit around fire and they offer the oblations. No, sacrifice here means any form of a higher connection that people may develop. That is their sacrifice, right? And in order to meet the requirements of the sacrifice, everybody has to do some kind of austerity in their life, right? So what are the challenges? How do they what are the risks that people take in their life? Austerities are also kind of risks, right? So what are the kind of risks that people take in their life? What are the difficulties that people are willing to accept in their life? So that is an indication of their charity, and everybody has to do that. And finally, charity. How do they let go of things? When you're giving up something in your life, how do you let go of things is basically indication of your charity. So all these 4 factors, food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity, are again further classified into the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So in short, the rest of the chapter now is going to be 4 into 3, 12 classifications, or 12 details, essential details, like that. So now we will begin first by understanding food, which is in or the gunas of the food. So from text number 8 to 10, we're going to discuss the food aspect. So what is the ahara? So ahara or food is in 3 categories. So we'll write 3 categories: sattva, rajas, and tamas. So let's take 3 specific colors for each of those. So for the sattva, the food in the mode of goodness is ayuhu, sattva, bala, arogya, sukha, priti vivardhana, rasya, snigdha, sthira hridaya, ahara, sattvika, priyaha. So this is the verse, text number 8, which talks about food in the mode of goodness. It should be ayuhu. It should something that should increase the duration of life and not decrease it. Increase life duration. Ayuhu. Sattva. It has to purify one's existence. Food also affects your mind. It's not something that is just nourishing your physical body. Food also affects your subtle body, right? So therefore, you have to be very, very careful. Food purifies one's entire existence. Purification of existence. Then it has to give strength, health, right? and it should give you happiness. Sometimes people eat all kinds of foods and they are so it doesn't give happiness when you eat that food. It has to give you the satisfaction. When I use the word happiness, even somebody eating rajasic food also may feel happy. We're not talking about that kind of happiness, but sometimes people do all kinds of weird challenges where they eat all kinds of weird foods just for the adventure of things. Those are all not sattvic foods, right? It has to give you happiness and they should be pleasing, right? So like that. So then they should be wholesome and pleasing to the heart, etc., etc. So these are all and it should give you satisfaction, so on, we discussed, right? So these are foods in Sattva-guna. Or to put it in short, basically all vegetarian food, and specifically even within vegetarian food which is freshly cooked, not packaged food, but freshly cooked, as fresh as possible, and free from onion and garlic, because they come in rajasic and tamoguni foods, free from mushrooms, right? So these are all the food, foods that are very disturbing to a spiritual practitioner. So that is the food that is in the mode of goodness, right? Whereas what about food in the mode of passion? The rajoguni food is as follows: foods that are too bitter, right? Not just little bitter. Little bitter is good, but too bitter, too sour, or too salty, right? Practically all the modern packaged food, all the chips and crisps that we get, they literally put so much of salt in that as a preservative, but it's not good for your own body also. Too salty, too hot, very, very spicy food, too pungent, dry and burning, are dear to those in the mode of passion, and khatva, amla, all that, and dukkha shokamaya pradaha. And what do? They give dukkha, they create distress and disease, right? When you eat such food, very soon your health is going to get affected, right? That is the nature of the rajoguni foods. And what about the tamoguni food? It says food prepared for more than 3 hours before being eaten. Basically all the packaged food, right? And food that is tasteless. So basically stale, tasteless, like all the leftovers pizzas that we keep in our refrigerator. And even though after they lost that freshness, but still you want to heat it up and eat it just because it has a semblance of a pizza, but it's a 3-day, 4-day, perhaps even a week-old pizza, and it looks like a pizza, but it has no taste. It has lost all its flavor. All the toppings have lost their flavor, but still you want to eat it, right? That is tasteless food. Stale, tasteless, decomposed. Basically all fish, meat, and eggs, they all come in this category: decomposed, putrid, right? And food consisting of remnants and untouchable things, right? Basically contaminated food, when I use the word contaminated here, means basically all the flesh-based foods, fish, meat, and eggs, they all come in this category, right? So, which are dear to those in the mode of darkness. In fact, I was surprised to hear this one time. I believe it is in Burma, where one of the delicacies is where they collect all the dead animals and they store it in some container, and I think it's the decomposing liquids that come out, they make some preparation out of that. So very, very nasty even to think about it, but literally any animal, any cat, any dog that they find, they pick it up on the road, on the street, and put it in the container, right? So yeah, there are, the world is a very, very interesting place. So there are a lot of people doing lots of things around the world. So yeah, so this is so there are people who eat such kind of contaminated food also, which nobody otherwise would want to even touch, like that. So this is basically the food that is coming in the mode of ignorance. So the thing is, because as we said, food is also not just going into your physical body, it is also creating your mental body. So we also have to be very careful what kind of food we are putting into our system. Then the next aspect after food, Krishna then focuses on the sacrifices aspect. So what should be or what are the, how do you identify whether a sacrifice is in sattva, rajas or tamas? So text number 11, 13 about yajna or sacrifice, right? So what are sattvic yajnas? He says sacrifice that is performed according to direction of scriptures. So they follow scriptural injunctions, or scriptural direction is followed, not just some freestyle, I feel like doing this, let me just do this, not kind of freestyle practice, but following scriptural direction, and very important, doing it as a matter of duty. Whether you like it or don't like it, but you have to do it as a matter of duty, not out of convenience. Sometimes we do our yajnas or even certain religious practices also, we do it out of convenience. Doing it out of convenience is not sattvic yajna, but doing it out of a sense of duty by those who desire no reward and also no expectation of any reward. Oh, if I do this, then I will go to heaven and enjoy, or other people around me will appreciate, oh wow, look, this person is so religious or so dedicated, they are doing these activities just for public appreciation or some public conformity also, right? Such yajnas should never be done. That is, so when it is following scriptural injunction out of a sense of duty without any expecting any reward, that is sattvic yajna. But what about the rajasic yajna? Rajasic yajna is performed for some material benefit. If I do this yajna, my boss will think I'm a very nice person, and therefore he will give me a raise or a promotion, right? So basically having some kind of ulterior motives to impress people, or even sometimes even the Vedas also offer sometimes such allurements, going to heavenly planets or getting some mystical powers. So all such yajnas, they come in Rajoguni category. For the sake of pride, not duty, but a sense of pride is dominating you. Oh, my neighbor did such a big yajna, let me also do it, out of competition, just to create a statement. Look, I'm also a big person, I'm also a very religious person, so let me also do this particular kind of a yajna, right? So doing it out of a sense of pride. And then you should know to be in the mode of passion, right? Whereas in the mode of ignorance, what happens? Sacrifice performed without direction of scripture, so without any scriptural guidelines, without scriptural direction. Then without distribution of prasad, very important point, because the Vedic system is that no matter what kind of ritual that you may do or what kind of yajna you may do, it should always be distribution of prasad. It need not be very elaborate, it could be something so simple like even, sometimes even giving a flower in return back to the participants, preferably something edible. That's why you'll see in the many traditional Vedic temples, as you're exiting the temple, the priest would be standing there, or somebody from the temple team would be standing there, and they would give little food. So it's called prasad, something that you honor, right? Like that. So there has to be distribution of prasad, otherwise the yajna becomes a tamoguni yajna. And without chanting of Vedic hymns, at least some Vedic mantras have to be recited, So the holy names of the Lord should always be present. That is the ultimate, essence of all. Vedesha sarver ahameva vedyo. The whole purpose of knowing all the Vedas is to know Krishna. So at least the holy names of the Lord should be recited while performing this yajna. So if that is also not there, and there should be proper remuneration for the priests. In Sanskritam, it is called as a dakshina. Dakshina here means that because the priest has done some yajna, the host, the hota, whoever has organized, they have to give some remuneration for the priest as well, like that. And also it has to be done with faith in that practice, not just doing it, oh, anyway it's not going to happen, I'm just wasting my time, but you have to have shraddha, you have to have faith in what you're doing there, in that particular ritual. That is the characteristic of yajna in the mode of ignorance, without any scriptural direction, without prasad, without vedikam, without any remuneration for priests, and without any kind of faith in the practice. You're just doing it for the sake of doing it, like a blind ritual. Therefore, a blind ritual is never a real sacrifice. You have to have, as sometimes you'd see it happens a lot in India, where and in the house there is some puja, some ritual, something, some worship is going on, and everybody in the house is doing their own thing. The poor priest, they pay some remuneration to the priest and invite the priest to their house to do something, but everybody in the house is doing their own thing. Somebody is playing video games, somebody is watching TV, somebody is busy doing their own thing, somebody has gone out of the house, somebody's on phone talking to their working or whatever. So you see, everybody, so that sense of coming together, the entire family coming together, or the entire community coming together and doing things, that's a very, very important aspect. Otherwise it becomes a tamoguni yajna, like that. Then after having described about the sacrifice as yajna, then from text number 14 to 19, Krishna is going to talk about austerities. Austerities or yajna, tapa. Right? Now this tapa, Krishna is going to classify in 3 levels. At the bodily level, there is sattvic tapasya at the level of one's speech and at the level of one's mind, like that. So austerity of body, austerity of speech, and austerity of mind, that is going to talk about them. So he says, regarding austerity of the body, he says, consists of worshipping the Supreme Lord, worship of the Lord, the Brahmanas, the sincere spiritual practitioners, right? The sincere spiritual practitioners, one's own spiritual master, right? Again, the spiritual master also should be very genuine. Like for example, we hear the story of our Bali Maharaj. His own guru Shukracharya was telling him not to worship Lord Vishnu. When Vamana, one of the incarnations of the Lord, when he comes personally and asks for charity, his own guru tells, don't give any charity to the Lord. This is not the Vedic injunction. So there he rejects that spiritual master because he was not guiding the disciple properly. But again, here we are talking about worshipping a bona fide spiritual master. Likewise, one's own parents, right? Deva, Dvija, Guru, Pragya. So Prabhupada adds in this aspect that worshipping one's superiors like one's father and mother, and also having cleanliness, simplicity. Simplicity means living a very simple life, not too extravagant, lavish life, right? Celibacy and non-violence. These are the characteristics of the austerity in the mode of goodness, like that. So by worshipping of the Supreme Lord here means, when you go take darshan of the Lord, you offer your obeisances. So using your body, right? Worship of Brahmana, spiritual master, parents means what? You are rendering service to them, right? So basically you're engaging your body. Some physical work is being done there. That is austerity at the level of the body. Maintaining cleanliness, whether you like it or not, whether it's summer or winter, you have to go take a bath early in the morning. You cannot say, oh, today is feeling very cold, I'll not take a bath. That's the cleanliness of the body is very, very important. Shaucha, simplicity of heart and your lifestyle. Maintaining celibacy, maintaining no adultery in one's marriage life, maintaining that loyalty and chastity to one's spouse. Yeah. Or if somebody chooses a lifestyle of being a brahmachari, then following the strict vows of their brahmacharya, like that. And ahimsa, maintaining a non-violent lifestyle. So these are all the austerities at the level of the body. But what about speech? Very, very interesting. At the level of the speech, Krishna says, anudvegakaram vakyam. Udvega means agitating. One's speech should be truthful, pleasing, beneficial, non-agitating, right? And also in regular recitation of Vedas. Regular Vedic recitation. Like we can recite the shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita, make it a regular practice where every day, if you are new to this, then probably you can start with 4 or 5 verses of the Bhagavad Gita every day. If you are already comfortable, reciting Vedic shlokas, then probably you can recite 1 chapter every day. It'll not take more than 15 to 20 minutes at max, right? And a period of time, your speed will also increase. So like that, but your speech should be truthful and at the same time pleasing. So this is a very nice description given that that how your truth, when you say one should always speak the truth, right? But at the same time, if your truth is going to hurt someone, better not speak the truth. Therefore, the word pleasing is given there, right? So it should be, the ideal statement is always speak the truth. But if your truth is going to hurt someone, better not speak the truth. Better be pleasing. But there's a third condition also. Never compromise on certain higher truths which are benefiting the soul of that person. So when you're presenting the absolute truth, never compromise that way. So these are 3 levels. Always speak the truth, but if your truth is hurting someone, better not speak the truth, but never compromise on the absolute truth. So truthful, pleasing, and beneficial. So never compromise on benefiting someone on an absolute level, like that. And therefore, regular recitation of the Vedic mantras, they purify our power of speech, right? You may not see a direct correlation at this point, but this is how it is, that when by regularly reading the Vedic scriptures and reciting the Vedic scriptures, naturally you will develop a kind of a siddhi, a perfection in your speech, right? And naturally you will develop this ability to be genuinely honest with people, at the same time convey the truth without hurting them, and taking care, speaking in a way that genuinely benefits people. These are all the effects that come by following this regular recitation of the Vedic scriptures, like that, right? And then regarding the mind, Prabhupada writes, Manah prasada saumyatvam, satisfaction. Very, very important principle here. Satisfaction is something that we have to work on. Satisfaction is not something that you gain. Satisfaction is something that it's a state that we have to work hard to be in. Many times we think that by doing this, then one day I will be satisfied. No, then you will never be satisfied. That one day is never going to come. Rather, satisfaction is an internal state for you to operate from. Then you will actually achieve whatever you want to. I don't understand. Satisfaction, many times people may even equate it with complacency, but satisfaction is not the same as complacency. Satisfaction is basically an internal state where one is free from all other unnecessary distractions and is happy in their state of being. And when you're happy in your state of being, whatever doing that you do will fall into place naturally. So this manas prasada, to be satisfied in the level of your mind. Then saumyatvam, again, here the word simplicity comes again, but here earlier the simplicity was at a physical lifestyle level. Here we are talking about simplicity as non-duplicious, being very straightforward, right? So which means sometimes people have one intention and they hide their ill motives and try to speak something else. Again, this should be also be correlated with what we discussed earlier. In the previous case, sometimes for the sake of being pleasing, to not speak the truth is no way violating this principle of simplicity, because you have to understand that there are no ulterior motives in that person. In fact, they have a genuine motivation to not hurt the other person. Therefore, they did not speak the truth, right? But here, that simplicity basically means being very straightforward in your intentions. Don't have any crooked intentions in your head. Not being duplicitous basically is what simplicity all about. So satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and again, purification of existence. These are the austerities of the mind. Very, very nice purport Srila Prabhupada gives to this verse. In fact, he actually gives some direct pointers also. How do we develop each of these qualities here? So Prabhupada writes that how simplicity means to be devoid of duplicity. For that, one should always think of welfare of all. So you can overcome your duplicitous nature by constantly thinking of others' welfare, right? Genuinely. And then gravity or silence means one should always think of self-realization. See, what a beautiful explanation here. Then controlling the mind means detaching the mind from sense enjoyment, like that. And one should be straightforward in one's dealings and thereby purify one's existence, right? Don't cheat. So that is the understanding of purification of existence, like that. Very, very nice purport. Again, please, in your free time, please go through all these purports, very, very deep purports of Srila Prabhupada, explaining each of these wonderful concepts in such great detail. Right. Next, we'll move on to understand what is then austerity in the mode of ignorance, in the mode of passion. So in the mode of passion, he says, penance performed out of pride for the sake of gaining respect and honor, and worship, for gaining respect, honor, worship. Basically, there's no satisfaction here at all, right? Is said to be in the mode of passion, and which is neither stable nor permanent. For such people, sometimes you will see people do all these kind of, public demonstrations, fasting, and so on, but they do it out of convenience, right? As long as that particular austerity is not creating too much of personal discomfort, or the moment it stops to give any kind of respect and honor to them, if they're not getting too much of media attention, right, then they will immediately stop their so-called austerity drive, like that. Then finally, austerity in the mode of ignorance, penance performed out of foolishness and self-torture. Right? Sometimes people do all kinds of stupid things, and externally it seems like it takes a great deal of austerity to do that, but they're unnecessarily torturing themselves for no purpose. Why? Because either to destroy themselves or others. to destroy themselves or others or injure others is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Sometimes people do all kinds of, like, people sometimes go, the suicide bombers that we hear, right? What are they doing? They think it is a kind of an austerity, but literally what are they doing? They're injuring themselves and others. And that is a very, very foolish, or this is the tamoguni austerity. See, that is why I'm saying, understand that, a proper insightful understanding of the food habits, the sacrifice patterns, the austerity patterns, and finally the charity patterns of people will help us analyze what kind of guna they are in and how to deal with such people accordingly, is what this chapter basically teaching us. And finally, Krishna is going to talk about the charity aspect. Again, very, very interesting. Maybe somehow, perhaps many of us will be able to relate with this. So from text number 20 to 22, 3 verses, Krishna is going to talk about the dana aspect. Dana here means charity. So what is charity in mode of goodness like? He says, charity given out of a sense of duty. Again, so duty is one term that will come consistently. Whenever sattva-guna comes, duty is synonymous with sattva-guna. Given out of duty without expectations of return. So sometimes people give charity, but then they have an expectation. There should be a big plaque right at the entrance that this so-and-so donation has been given by this person, right? So, but without any expectation, very important, at the proper time and place and to a worthy person. Also very important, when you are engaging in charity, you should be an educated donor. Don't just donate out of sentiment, or don't just donate randomly just because I have money, let me just give out money. Sometimes I see people, sometimes they just see some poor person somewhere on the street and they just give the money, but you don't know what they are doing with that money, whether they're going and buying cigarettes or drugs, or whether they are giving it to some mafia, and you don't know what is happening with your money, and you have to undergo the karma for supporting indirectly such kind of illicit activities. So you also have to know to whom are you making your charity, like that. So it has to be an educated choice, but not a sentimental choice, like that. That is in the mode of goodness, like that. Then what about rajoguni charity? Something perhaps many of us will relate with now, right? Charity performed with the expectation of some return. I donate for your organization so that tomorrow your organization will help my organization. That's something like that. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Or with a desire for fruitive result. Oh, the whole next day, tomorrow in the media, everybody is going to glorify me. Oh, I have given, $10 million in charity to so-and-so organization, headlines, or sometimes in a grudging mood, out of sometimes due to peer pressure, somebody will do charity. Oh, you all go together and this person has given $1 million. Oh, this person has given $2 million. Now I have to give at least $500,000. And then with great grudge, you end up giving. And then you are thinking, oh, why? Perhaps you think, maybe I gave extra. Maybe I gave more. The moment you have second thoughts after giving something in charity, understand that you did it in the mode of passion, right? Basically, it was not an educated, reasoned choice that you made. Whereas charity performed at an impure place, at an improper time, right? And to unworthy people, without proper attention. Very, very important point. Sometimes you may be at the right time, at the right place, to the right person, if you're giving charity, but if you're not attentive, like you're not fully investing, because when you're giving charity, the mood is that somehow I have been blessed by this ability to give something, and with that right humility, with the right frame of mind, if you have to attentively, one has to give this charity, not just okay, here, take it. That's not the mood of sattvic charity, right? Such without proper attention and respect is said to be in the mode of ignorance, like that. So after having described the outer circle of the yagya, dana, tapa and ahar, food, sacrifice, austerity and charity, these are the elements of practice. So when all these four, we have to analyze for ourselves first, that where do we stand. So we should always come as close to the sattva as possible. Second, it will also help us analyze how different people around us with that, who are having that kind of a faith-based practice, right? So for them, how they're now, ideally, if you look at these four things, actually we are not interested even in sattva also. If you look at it from pure spiritual perspective, food if you go back to our previous drawing, we said there's a dharmic practitioner and who have spiritual conviction, and those are faith-based, faith-driven practices. If you're following dharma directly, then the food that you eat will be spiritualized food that is offered to Krishna. The sacrifices that you do are sacrifices that are in relationship with the absolute truth, right? And especially in Kali Yuga, japanam japa yagnanam japa yagyosmi. In the 10th chapter, Krishna, while describing his vibhutis, he says, among various yagyas, I am the japa yagya, the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, like that. So one directly engages in that kind of yagya. Then when performing tapasya, one is trying to, at the level of body, one is trying to engage in service of the Lord. At the level of the mind, one is trying to thinking of the Lord. While speech, one is trying to glorify the Lord. Charity, one is trying to perform for the expansion of the Lord's mission and for the welfare of the Lord, like that. And it is not, again, when I'm using this, whenever I use the word Lord, you have to broaden the understanding of the Lord as well, right? Because within that understanding, because everything is connected to Krishna, it is not that a spiritualist does not give charity to ordinary things. Once Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, he was taking some of his disciples on a pilgrimage, and as they were walking past, they noticed some unfortunate beggars were sitting there, and he noticed all his householder disciples, the grihasthas, they walked past those beggars, and immediately Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, why did you not give them charity? And he said, Prabhupada, he was also referred to by the name Prabhupada. So Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, this is charity. This is mundane charity. This is, they are your brothers. If you cannot identify Krishna as your common father, right? If that is what you are trying to practice, then don't you see your brothers and sisters in them? So you have to give them some charity, not with the intention that I am giving this charity to give them one day meal, but rather you have to give that charity with the understanding that here I am, the more fortunate son or daughter of Krishna, trying to help my other brother or sister in coming closer to Krishna. So that is a mood with which one has to take care of this world. So that is the spiritualized understanding of all these principles, yagya, dana, tapa, ahar, all of them, like that. So that is the higher standard that we are trying to follow. But if not, those who are having this faith-based practice, they follow this sattva, rajas or tamasi kind of food, charity, austerity or sacrifice. But how do I spiritualize everything? That is the important principle. And that is what Krishna is going to end this chapter with, from text number 23 to 28. The theme is how to spiritualize everything. Basically, how to spiritualize my food, charity, austerity, and sacrifice. Right? How to spiritualize everything. So the principle is that how everything can be spiritualized when it is connected to the Supreme. And how do I connect to the Supreme? While connecting to the Supreme is more of an internal mood, sometimes we also need certain external activities to bring about that kind of an internalization of mood. And that internalization happens by reciting this mantra, Om Tat Sat. Right? So this is a very famous Vedic mantra, Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho brahmanas trividha smritaha brahmanas tena vedascha yajnascha vihita pura. From the beginning of creation, these three words, Om Tat Sat, were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the Vedic hymns and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So the principle is, do everything, connect to the Supreme means do everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme. And how do I create, that thing, that internal mood of creating that satisfaction? I trigger it by an external activity in the form of chanting this Om Tat Sat. What is the significance of this Om Tat Sat? When I begin any activity, I recite this, I invoke the Omkara, the Om mantra. If in the Vedic culture, like for example, even in our classes, we start with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Ajnanatimirandhasya. So the Omkara is a representation of the Supreme Lord, and also is used with the understanding that here is this all-pervasive Supreme Absolute Truth whom I'm trying to connect to. Ultimately, everything is connected to the Lord. So in the beginning, we try to see everything's connection to the Lord. And the Tat is something that is, while we are acting, during the performing stage, when we are performing that activity, right, then we are trying to remember the Lord, right? And finally, the Sat aspect, it reminds us of the objective. Why am I doing? What am I doing? Right? It defines as the objective, as ultimately the whole purpose of this yajna or dana or tapa is to please the Supreme Lord or satisfy the Supreme Lord or indirectly connect to the Supreme Lord. That objective is defined by the Sat mantra. So by this Om Tat Sat, by using this, in the Vedic tradition, one would remember that, here ultimately the objective of all my activities is to please that Supreme Absolute Truth. And therefore, usually in the beginning or definitely in the end, after end of entire sacrifice, you'll see all the priests or, they recite Om Tat Sat. So Sri Prabhupada also, in the end of many purports or, books, he would write Om Tat Sat. After the introduction, you'll also see Prabhupada writing Om Tat Sat. And the Bhagavatam introduction, you'll see that. So the point is that anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme is impermanent, and therefore that is called asat and is useless both in this life or in next life. So we have to understand that ultimately the whole purpose of all this yajna, dana, tapa, the outer circle of a tradition, the practices, they are all meant for one purpose, which is connecting to the Supreme, right? And therefore this Om Tat Sat is such a powerful mantra, by reciting which, if everything that you do in your life, just keep reciting this Om Tat Sat, by which one can connect. And of course, very specifically, Sri Prabhupada would always emphasize about chanting the holy names of the Lord, right? Because while this Om Tat Sat is an indication of the greatness of Krishna, his direct holy names, like the Mahamantra, is an indication of the sweetness of the Lord, right? So according to the mood of the individual practitioner's tradition, if somebody is interested in connecting just to the greatness of the Lord, there are specific kind of mantras. If somebody wants to connect to the sweetness of the Lord, then there are specific kind of mantras like that. But the principle is that we have to remember to connect everything to the Supreme, like that. So that is the understanding of the specific chapter. So let me now very quickly summarize what we discussed in today's chapter. We had a fairly long introduction. The whole connecting theme to this chapter is, in the end of previous chapter, Krishna emphasized that divine life means scriptural life, period. So then naturally it means demoniac life means those who reject the scriptures, the Vedas. But what about those in between who are following some discipline, who have not rejected everything like the demoniac people, but they do follow something, but based on their faith, but not necessarily on scriptures? What about that? So there we understood Shraddha based on dharmic Shraddha and faith-based practice. Right? In fact, the word Shraddha itself is reserved for faith-based dharmic practice. Right? Faith-based practice is, faith is something that can change. Belief, Prabhupada would always say, faith or belief, these things can change anytime. But dharma never changes. Right? So when we're following this faith-based practice, it can be classified into goodness, passion, and ignorance. And specifically, these three can be understood based on one's food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity. And then we saw the whole list of classifications of these four principles based on sattva, rajas, and tamogunas. And finally, we saw that ultimately the purpose is not to be stuck even in sattva guna, but to even rise beyond that sattva guna. And that is a state where you want to spiritualize everything. And that spiritualization process happens by connecting everything to the Supreme. And in this chapter, specifically, Krishna talks about the Vedic system of reciting Om Tat Sat, by which we try to remember the Lord and connect every activity to the Lord. All right. So let's stop our discussion here. If any quick questions or comments anybody has, let's take them very quickly. All right. Suresh Prabhu, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a small question. Actually, I have one or two questions. First, I will ask you one question. It is related with of course we give charity to the recognized institution to whom with we are connected. That is ISKCON only, Prabhuji. But then, as an individual, there is some kind of a question mark. Question mark is related to say for example, there is some kind of a project going on. It could be temple construction or XYZ assignment. And when we contribute, we are contributing, we are giving it to a person, to the devotee, and who is passing on to the the whole project. But when we give this donation, there is some kind of a expectation of more, whereby we feel okay, I want to give this X amount, but the person's expectation is X plus something. Now, in that case, what happens is that whatever you give, in spite of doing that, you feel some kind of a guilt. What to do? Then there's a question mark. What to do? Jada dena to kitna dena? There is no end to it.
Right.
So
right.
how to circumvent this situation whereby we don't feel guilty? So what should be our consciousness on that front, Prabhuji?
Okay. So it seems like you are very nicely given an example of a description of charity in the mode of passion, because it seems charity is you are giving with some expectation of return. Here you are not expecting your name somewhere, but at least there's an expectation that you're carrying that, oh, I'll be fulfilling that other person, or I'll be in the good looks of the other person, or maybe I may want to conform to the understanding of the other person. So it seems like maybe there is some kind of a subtle pressure under which you are making this charity. So I think you need to probably just sit down peacefully, internalize this whole chapter, and understand that according to this is my capacity, and this is the cause with which I identify. And also, even when you're making any charity, when I said about being very reasoned in terms of your approach, even today, if you look at even modern laws, all trusts also have to provide their reports where the money is going and how they are utilizing their money. their fundings and charitable donations. So it's also good to actually know how your money has been utilized. So it's every right that you have, even from a legal point of view, also to know that, and even from your own internal point of view also, it's important to know how that money has been utilized. So yes, definitely you should have a right to know that as well. But don't engage in charity just to please someone, or but of course, I'm just giving both the perspectives here. Sometimes the other person, whoever is trying to engage you in this service, may have a very deep, very detached and very deep spiritual understanding, that maybe he or she is seeing something in you which perhaps you yourself have not seen, in terms of your own potential or in terms of your own shortcomings or whatever. So I will say it's a very specific thing. Therefore, without judging anyone, I will just say, internalize this chapter and act at that level where you feel like you are being very honest to your capacity, and at the same time you are not succumbing to any kind of external pressure like that. Because sometimes the role of the spiritual master, for example, is sometimes to inspire the follower to see something that they cannot see about themselves. And sometimes, just to raise the bar of a disciple, the spiritual master can sometimes very gently, lovingly nudge the disciple to a higher level of performance, right? A spiritual master or a teacher, a mentor, whatever, right? So you have to be very careful sometimes not to judge the other person. At the same time, not be so naive to even succumb to pressure. So therefore, I'm saying you have to very carefully introspect and see where you stand and act accordingly. All right.
All right, thank you. And Prabhuji, second question is like, as you said it, that when we give the donation, we have to be very careful in giving the donation to whom we are giving, because when you give the donation, it could be misused, and the karmic reactions could come to you. Now, my question is like, like as you gave the example of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, like he said it to like some beggars were sitting in line, and he asked his follow disciples like, why you didn't give it to them? Now, like ultimately they are sitting beggars, and we don't know what is their background, where they are going to use the money. So when Guru Maharaj of that caliber is saying, then definitely there will be some kind of essence in that. So how to understand these two statements which are looking very contradictory, Prabhuji?
Nice. See, the principle there was, Bhaktisiddhanta was disturbed by the apathy shown by his disciples there. He could sense that there was their spirituality was making their heart so hard that they were exhibiting apathy towards the suffering of a fellow living entity. That is why he was very, it is that this example is not to be just quoted for the sake of one should always give charity, but the principle there was that our spirituality is supposed to make our heart soft, and because of certain spiritual rule, if you are not allowing the softness of your heart to manifest, and if you are becoming so apathetic and hard-hearted, then it's like you're defeating the whole purpose. So that apathy he's trying to shake by telling them that, hey, give them charity, like that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna. All right. So, Gail ji, would you like to ask your question?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes. Yeah, one of my questions is about Om Tat Sat. So by reciting this mantra, we are reminding ourselves that everything that we do should be done for Krishna's pleasure.
Right.
So I realize that you said that maybe this mantra we chant to remember Krishna's greatness, and the Hare Krishna mantra we chant to remember his sweetness. So if we never chant Om Tat Sat and we only chant Hare Krishna mantra, either before our yajna or after a yajna, whatever our daily sacrifices are, which everything should be a sacrifice. Is that sufficient, or is it necessary that this Om Tat Sat mantra be invoked?
Okay, let me answer this question at two levels. First, the essence of all Vedic principles is, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So however way you are able to do it, that is the essence, that whatever works for you, do that. Having said that, when we are talking about certain Vedic practices, especially Vedic yajnas or certain rituals, there is a certain operating procedure, a standard operating procedure, right? Like, for example, when you are invoking the Lord as a yajna purusha, when you perform a fire sacrifice, there's a specific way in which the Lord is to be invoked, and there's a specific way in which you're supposed to chant the mantras, and a specific way in which you're supposed to offer the oblations, right? So it's like, let us say your best friend, right? You know that your best friend responds to you whenever you call him or her by their pet name, what are your favorite name, right? But then you don't go to their office and shout at them with your friendly name, right? So when Krishna comes as a yajna purusha, he is there in a very official position. So you have to invoke him by a certain official way. So therefore, in the Vedic, when we are performing certain Vedic yajnas, it is important that we follow that standard protocol which Krishna himself has given. But if you want to connect to Krishna as that simple cowherd boy in Vrindavan, he is happy with names like, Yashoda Nandan, as Radhika Raman. He is happy with those names. So you can, so when he's at home, call out his home names. But when he's in office, please deal with him with respect. Like that.
Yeah, that's very, very nice analogy. So, Srila Prabhupada, he was trying to link us with Krishna's sweet side, So why is it that he would use, as you pointed out, he would put Om Tat Sat at the end of some of his writings, and also why wouldn't he even also begin, put the Om Tat Sat at the beginning and end of his writings?
Right. I mean, I would say, why not? Because when a pure devotee, even when they're calling out these official names, like I said, going back to our same example, even when you go to, say, your friend is the president of America, right? And when you go to the White House and when you call out, you'll say, Madam President or, Mr. President. You call out, you are very proud. Look, my friend is the president, right? So that is the mood with which even pure devotees, when they are invoking the Lord in their greatness, within their heart, that sweet form of the Lord is still there, but with pride, with this is like spiritual pride, not the ordinary pride. They like to address the Lord that way, and also they're also setting an example that, look, not everybody can be at that level. So there's as a Vedic scholar, Prabhupada would always adhere to certain a style of presentation, certain style of writing, and it is a common Vedic practice to use this Om Tat Sat, in the beginning or in the end of anything to create auspiciousness. So Prabhupada would follow that. So I don't see it anyway contradicts the mood of sweetness.
Well, I mean, it does seem unnatural if you have an intimate relationship with somebody. Doesn't it seem to, if you're my friend, how could I it seemed like how they say not like a what's that term? Oh my God. You know, when you deal with somebody in a way that's like inappropriate for the relationship, what do you call that? I forget now the term.
Casual?
You know, no. It's Sanskrit term for when a dealing with a person is not in correlation with the relationship.
Okay. Like Maryada Vyatikrama?
Rasa.
Oh, Rasabhas. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seemed a little bit like
Okay.
that, I'm not going to refer to my friend or my mother.
Okay.
So it seemed a little bit like that to me,
Okay. I'll give you another example. Srila Prabhupada, he instituted this chanting of the Narsinga mantra, Narsinga prayers for protection of all devotees.
Yeah.
Now somebody may say, why did Prabhupada introduce another mantra? Isn't the Hare Krishna mantra sufficient?
Yeah, that's also my question.
Right?
Yeah.
See, I can read your mind. So the understanding here is that when Narsingh Dev is that form of Krishna who loves protecting his devotees.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hare Krishna mantra is a very special, intimate mantra invoking Radha and Krishna. So Krishna is with Radharani and we are trying to connect to that particular mood of Krishna. So when Krishna is with Radharani, we don't want to disturb him. Oh, Krishna, problem, please come save me. We don't want to disturb Krishna in the middle of that. But Narsingh Dev is happy doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in fact, I would say whenever we want to create auspiciousness, invoking Krishna in his greatness is the proper rasa. In fact, writing Hare Krishna mantra, there would be rasa bhas. If we extend it like this. So when we are trying to create things like auspiciousness and invocatory mantras, it is very natural to use the Om because that is the form of the Lord who has that mood, who wants to create auspiciousness. But when it comes to filling your heart with that prema, then the Hare Krishna mantra, the sweetness aspect comes.
Okay, and that was very nice, people. And why Prabhupada wouldn't put Om Tat Sat both at the beginning and the end instead of just the end?
Usually that's the Vedic system was like after every yajna or every mantra, the system that Brahmanas would follow is they would chant together Om Tat Sat. So that is the principle. So even many contemporary devotees also do that. So there's it's a custom. That's how we do that. So we are following that tradition that way. Yeah.
Put it just at the end.
Yes. Usually it's chanted in the end. Like that. Okay, my Lord, here everything is now like there are many such things like Sarvam Krishnarpanamastu. Everything now belongs to Krishna. Even in a yajna also, when you offer Idam Krishnaya, Idam Namama, this is for Krishna, not for me. So usually after doing something, you recite that, right? So you have to show something and you say, Krishna, this is yours, like that.
Okay, you also were giving the definitions of each syllable, Om Tat Sat, and they kind of became a little blurred for me. Like Om refers to the all pervasiveness of Krishna, right?
Right.
And then Tat, can you repeat Tat?
Yeah. So we discussed, I'll project the screen for you again. When we are performing that particular yajna, in the beginning, while performing, and to remind us of the objective, right? So I will anyway share these slides in our group. So in the WhatsApp group, so you can also access it from there. All right. Okay. Let's take the next question. The last question. Arvindji, would you like to ask a question? You had another question now?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, Thank you very much. First of all, you mentioned about the 3 levels of speech that we should have, like be truthful, and when it is hurting, we should be pleasing also, and it should be beneficial also. So thank you very much for this. And my question is, like this chapter is regarding the faith. There is one scriptural faith we have who follows the Vedas and those who do not follow. So what happens to those people who follow different religions, like there is Buddhism, Christianity, and in chapter 8.5 Krishna says, whoever remembers me at the time of death, he comes to me without doubt. So like Jesus Christ and Buddha, he himself was the form of Vishnu, and there is other religions also, like Jainism is there. So why they did not disclose this thing, and what is their destiny what is their destiny ultimately? They are also following the religion like sent by the god, or
Right. See, actually, this is what I addressed in the beginning itself. When we spoke about the faith-based traditions, we are talking about all the contemporary world traditions right now, right? So because understand that, therefore, when we are looking at these world traditions, world religions, we have to look at them. Don't give a blanket statement that this entire tradition is like that, but rather within every tradition you will find practitioners who have sattva, rajas, and tamogunas. So that is why you have to have a case-to-case approach when you're that's the whole point of this whole chapter. That's what Arjuna asked this question. What about those people? Literally, what you just asked is what was Arjuna's question in the beginning of this chapter, and the entire elaboration. So you have to analyze their food habits, their sacrifice habits, their tapasya, the austerity, and the charity. How do they follow? And accordingly, we'll have to create an understanding. And the sattva, we studied in the 14th chapter. If you are sattvic follower, you go to higher planetary system, or you elevate in your consciousness. If you're rajasic, you stay in middle planetary system and reborn again on earth. If you're in tamasi, you go in the lower planetary system, or in worst case, you may even end up becoming an animal in the next life. So this is the understanding we got from the 14th chapter already. That is their destination accordingly. Like that.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. And one more question is there. Regarding faith in scriptures, there are so many verses and things which we follow in our life. So in this life only, we get so much benefit. And just like the food, sacrifice, austerity, charity, when we follow in this life only, we become satisfied, and the food which we eat in goodness, it is pleasing to the heart. This is truth. So, but sometimes there are things which is difficult to digest intellectually, like 2 things which I get some difficulty in it. So this is regarding eclipse, like Rahu. Can I ask this question? Yeah.
I think that is a little beyond the scope of our discussion today.
Okay.
So let's restrict to the topic that it's in discussion. Okay. Yeah. Probably in a different course or on different time we can have discussion. All right. We have a question in the chat here. Can you explain the difference between Shraddha and Vishwas? So the first part of this chapter where we spoke about faith versus dharma, that was the understanding. So in short, basically Shraddha is something that is induced or inspired by practice of scriptural injunctions and realizing what is there in the scriptures. Whereas Vishwas is just a faith that may come due to historical information, social ancestral traditions, or whatever social constructs, right? This is what faith is about. So that is the main difference. I'm not sure if that is what you are asking. The entire first introductory part of the class, Kirit Patelji, is meant for that. So let me know if there's anything more that you are actually looking for when you ask that question. All right. So then, yeah. Okay. Sureshji, you have another question? Let's keep it quick because we're also running out of time.
Yes, I'm sorry, Prabhuji. Actually, I just wanted to have that continuation, but I forgot to ask you that. I just wanted to ask you that when we give this charity, how to spiritualize that? Like you had said it, everything has to be spiritualized. So how to spiritualize that? What should be our consciousness? What should be the sentences we should be speaking to ourselves while giving that? Because we don't have any expectations on that. So how can we do it in what consciousness?
Right. See, that is what we discussed in the remainder of the Bhagavad Gita so far, right? What is the purpose for which you are doing it? So is it, if you remember, we discussed in the 12th chapter, we discussed the whole hierarchy of the spiritual spectrum, right? So whichever stage you are in, accordingly you plug in and accept where you are, and at that particular stage, whatever is your level of understanding and your level of nishta, you accordingly apply your spiritual purpose, and then you do it. So, for example, at somebody maybe at a very advanced level, that ultimately everything is for Krishna's service. My life, my belongings, everything is for Krishna. Somebody can operate at that level. Somebody else may operate saying that no, Rupa Goswami says that you have to invest X amount of your income in charity as so that I become not so attached to my wealth. So somebody operating at that level may follow at that level. Point is, wherever you are, be honest and act according to that level of nishta.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Okay then. Okay, I see there's one more question. Is it Gailji, did you raise your hand again? Or
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. I had a question about the Srila Prabhupada. In one point of this chapter, he says that those who worship demigods, right? Their worship is in the mode of passion, because they're worshiping, because they're worshiping the demigods because they want something in return, right? But then in another verse, he says that those in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. So how do you reconcile?
Okay. See, the idea of worshipping devatas. So right in the beginning, when Shraddha was described, Sattvic Shraddha is worship of devatas, Rajasic is worship of demons, and Tamasic is worship of ghosts. So there, the idea of worshipping devatas means, because one cannot directly have that understanding of this one supreme absolute truth, one can very easily correlate with the extended understanding of that absolute truth in the form of these various cosmic administrators. So in that context, they are indirectly worshipping the Lord by worshipping the Lord in his designated cosmic positions. So that way it is kind of a sattvic understanding. But if you are approaching the devatas with a fruitive mentality that, look, I'm going to get very quick results, then that is a rajasic kind of a worship, which is what we spoke in the in the second chapter, in the fourth chapter, in the seventh chapter, in the ninth chapter. Krishna highlighted these aspects.
Okay, so then therefore, a person, you can understand which mode a person is in depending upon why he is worshiping the devatas, right? So if they're worshiping the devatas as, let's say, Krishna's cabinet members, even though they don't realize they're only the cabinet members, then that's goodness.
Correct. Yeah. Right? In fact, exactly. In the fifth canto of Bhagavatam, they described how Bharat Maharaj, he would actually do worship of all the devatas with understanding that they are all limbs of the Supreme Lord. So that is the mode of goodness worship of the devatas. Yeah.
No, but if he understands that they are only limbs of the Supreme Lord, then that sounds like transcendental goodness, not mode of goodness.
No, at least, but still, I understood your point here. Yeah, that is still beyond the gunas. That's what the example of Bharat Maharaj that I just quoted now. But sometimes one may still not see beyond the devatas that there is the supreme devata. The supreme
right. That's
God.
what I was saying.
Yes. Yeah. That is where it comes at the goodness level. Correct. Yeah.
Mode of goodness. Yeah. Yes. Material mode of goodness. Yes. And also, with this mode of goodness, I was trying to look while you were speaking for the specific reference, but there is a line in this chapter where Prabhupada says that, our worship worship has to be in the mode of goodness. And there he's just at mode of goodness. He wasn't saying transcendental. He said mode of goodness. But at the same time, he says, you know, we should take directly to Krishna consciousness. So why did he say, you know, our sacrifices or our worship has to be in the mode of goodness?
So you have to understand
because,
that.
No, I'm sorry. Because
yeah.
My understanding is that no matter which mode a person is in, you know, he could even be in the ignorance or passion, you can directly take to Krishna consciousness. So why he says you have to come to the mode of goodness, you have to, sacrifice has to be done in the mode of goodness. I wish I could find the exact quote, but I couldn't find it.
Right. See, this is a concept which we'll elaborate in the 18th chapter. There is the intention of your action and there is the execution of your action. Our intention is beyond the mode of goodness, that is supremely pure, Shuddha Sattva. But right now, because I'm still operating in this material world, I have to invoke the gunas. So for the execution of my action, I have only three choices, which is Sattva, Rajas or Tamas. So therefore, when the scriptures talk about, or Prabhupada talks about being in the mode of goodness constantly, he's talking about that level, at the level of your execution of your action, have your determination mode of goodness, have your knowledge in the mode of goodness, you know, have your motivation in the mode of goodness. All of these aspects we'll discuss in the 18th chapter about these different, the 6 factors of knowledge and motivation. So they all, we operate, we try to operate a level of goodness because that is the purest among the 3 gunas. And Prabhupada himself many times would say that this mode of goodness is like the springboard to jump to transcendence.
Yeah, but you know, I know you said we'll discuss it later, but you know, I'm just thinking, why not have our intention as, even though we are in this material world, why not operate with that intention of transcendental goodness? Why do we have to restrict ourselves?
Yes, our intention is, that's what I said. The mode of goodness Prabhupada is emphasizing is on the execution level, action level. Our intentions should always be on transcendental level.
I guess this action level is what I don't understand, you know, this action level. What is that? What do you mean, actually?
That's the topic for our next week's class.
Always coming attractions. Okay.
Yes, coming soon. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare
All
Krishna.
right. So let's end our discussion today. So thank you all so much for joining us once again. Let's conclude with our closing prayers. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vadhitam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you all so much for joining us. See you next week. That will be our last week of discussions. On Friday and Saturday, we will discuss the 18th chapter, which is a fairly long chapter. We'll split it into 2 parts. And on the next Sunday's class will be like the grand summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita. So we are coming to the end of this course, and please stay along for that one last lap coming up next week. Hare Krishna.